And we're back on Big Board Sports here, 104.5 The Team, ESPN Radio. Of course, the news in the college football world surrounds Ohio State and Urban Meyer and this 6-person committee, which will investigate Urban Meyer and what he knew, when he knew it, who he told, or who he didn't tell. Adam Rittenberg covers college football across the country for ESPN, and he joins us here on Big Board Sports and 104.5 The Team, ESPN Radio. Adam, good morning. Thanks for taking the time.
Oh, good morning. Thanks for having me on.
Let's start simply with this. When do we expect some sort of decision from this 6-person committee made up of 3 Board of Trustees members at Ohio State and 3 independent members?
Well, Ohio State announced late Sunday night that the investigation will take no more than 2 weeks. I don't believe we'll have a resolution this week. I'd heard that the investigation would really only get started today, which is Tuesday. So there's certainly people to talk to, not just Urban Meyer, but Shelley Meyer, his wife, other people on staff. Brett McMurphy reported on Monday that Courtney Smith, Zach Smith's ex-wife, is willing to cooperate fully in this investigation. So she needs to be talked to and certainly has a lot of evidence here. So that's all part of this. I would imagine we will know something late next week or maybe early the following week as far as what they determine for Urban Meyer and others in Ohio State's administration. I think Gene Smith, the athletic director, very much a person who we need to hear from, and the committee needs, or the investigators need to hear from. A lot of Ohio State fans are putting this on him. So I think it's certainly going to be an interesting couple of weeks, but I would imagine we'll know something probably around August 20th.
Adam Rittenberg with us. Check him out on Twitter at ESPN Rittenberg. And Adam, in regards to Ohio State Athletic Director Gene Smith, I saw your colleague Heather Dinich tweet that Gene said, I can't comment just yet. I want to let the university investigators do their job. How much of Urban Meyer's comments in relation to his boss, Gene Smith, do you think will play a factor in this investigation? What the comments were made, was it Friday or Saturday of last week?
Well, yeah, Urban Meyer's statement didn't necessarily name Gene Smith, but Urban Meyer defended his reporting anything he knew on to others. You would assume that is Gene Smith. Now, Zach Smith said that in October of 2015, which is the big incident here, where he was investigated by police, not arrested, and has not been charged yet, even though that investigation is technically still open. Zach Smith saying Gene Smith called him and said, "Hey, you need to come back here." Zach Smith was out recruiting around Halloween. He comes back to Ohio State. So I know that was a big question last week of, did Urban Meyer fulfill his reporting responsibilities as a supervisor, as an Ohio State employee? And in this case, it appears as though the police contacted Ohio State directly or Gene Smith directly, and so there wasn't really a need to report anything. So those are all things that need to be uncovered here by the investigative team. Gene Smith, what did you hear from the police department? What did you do at that point? What type of discussions were there with Zach Smith? What type of discussions were there with Urban Meyer about keeping Zach Smith on the staff? And we've seen Zach Smith's personnel file, and essentially it doesn't change year to year as far as he gets a raise every year. He does his own performance review. Gene Smith sends him a letter every January saying, "Great season, here's your raise." There was nothing in there about an incident in October of 2015. So that's what really needs to be learned about here. I know there was an attorney in Columbus, Larry James, who's worked with Ohio State before he was involved. So what did he know? Is he going to be talking to the investigators? This is all why I think this thing is going to take a little bit of time to really find out what happened surrounding that incident. But then the biggest question, and the one that, again, Urban Meyer has to answer, because it does seem like he had at least knowledge of the history of this relationship from Florida to Ohio State through the text messages sent between Courtney Smith and Shelley Meyer. Why did you continue to keep Zach Smith on your coaching staff? That's the big one that Urban Meyer has to find a good enough explanation, I think, in order to keep his job as the head coach.
I'm with you there, Adam, because by firing Zach Smith at this time, it's clearly an admission that he did something wrong. But it was how many years ago? And so, right, why wasn't he gone sooner if you knew this was going on? And certainly somebody could have been told, or Urban Meyer has the power to do something more than he did. How does Ohio State, let's let's play this out hypothetically, I guess. If Urban Meyer is still the head coach of the Buckeyes this fall, how does Ohio State spin this from a PR perspective?
Well, I think we don't know fully what happened in 2015. It was originally reported as an arrest. It's not an arrest. It was an investigation of two charges that were misdemeanors. Then one of them became a felony. But, again, no charges were pursued by the prosecutor there in Delaware County. So I really think a lot of this is finding out exactly what happened in 2015, and was that enough to fire somebody? Now, you could certainly argue that just the fact that there was an investigation with the knowledge that you already had about that marriage and the situation back in 2009 when Zach Smith was arrested, ended up being charged. His ex-wife saying now that she was pressured not to press charges by people that were around Urban Meyer. With all that knowledge, why keep him on staff, even if the 2015 incident was maybe in your estimation or the police's estimation relatively minor or something that wasn't going to result in charges? So I think finding out exactly what Urban Meyer knew, exactly what his wife communicated to him, and that may be very hard to fully ascertain here. But then, again, going back and saying, why is this enough to fire him? Maybe the school has different determinations for that. Again, certainly from a legal standpoint, I don't think Urban Meyer did anything wrong, and I don't believe that there will be a Title IX issue. I don't think Ohio State, when all is said and done, can fire Urban Meyer for cause, but they could certainly fire him because of maybe a moral obligation not to have Zach Smith around his players, around his program, especially in this environment right now where this is such a prevalent topic. So in that case, I think they have to start negotiating a settlement because I don't believe they'll be able to fire Urban Meyer for cause.
Check out his podcast, Campus Conversations. ESPN's Adam Rittenberg with us here on Big Board Sports, 104.5 The Team, ESPN Radio. Adam, I'll let you go on this, and I'm curious just because we can't ignore it. It is kind of the elephant in the room here. How much does Urban Meyer's success play into this? There's a difference between a major college football program selling out every Saturday and actually winning on top of that. Urban Meyer has continued to win at Ohio State, and really they didn't skip much of a beat after Jim Tressel.
Without a doubt. I mean, his availability came at the perfect time for them to continue to succeed. Undefeated in his first season, 47-3 in the Big Ten, a couple of Big Ten titles, 4 division titles, and a national championship. I don't know how it's completely out of mind while this is going on. Now, from what I've heard about Joanne Davidson, the 90-year-old former Ohio Speaker of the House who's leading the investigative team, I hear very strong things about her, that she'll maintain the integrity of that group. Mary Jo White, who's leading the investigative team, former U.S. Attorney for the Southern District, was the chair of the SEC Security of State Commission. She's somebody who will add integrity to this process, but you're still talking about an incredibly successful coach who, if you get rid of him, that could certainly impair the program, at least in the short term. But I don't think that's going to be the ultimate factor here. I do think finding out what really happened and what the discussions were and what, if everybody has their stories and how aligned they are, that's going to be what ultimately determines where Ohio State goes. But I think the problem for Urban Meyer is that he had a long-term knowledge that this marriage, this relationship between Zach and Courtney Smith was volatile and at times violent, depending on who you believe. So, and his wife, Shelley Meyer, seems to believe Courtney Smith. So that's all part of this, and that's all working against Urban Meyer.
Well, we'll see how close to this 2-week timeline this 6-person committee keeps, and it is certainly a storyline that not many people saw coming this college football offseason, as we're less than a month from kicking this thing off, especially for the Buckeyes. Adam, thanks so much for the time here this morning, the insight, and shedding some light on the issue here with Urban Meyer and Ohio State.
You bet. I enjoyed it. Thanks for having me on.